All right, we are here to discuss some South of Midnight. I hope y'all are all, if you're playing the game, I hope you're all having a good time and I hope you're all ready to talk some Midnight. So we're changing up everything's still remaining the same in terms of the rankings at the end of the month. We're still going to be doing that, but we're going to be picking out every now and then for some people who might want to just check out some individual coverage of games for, some bigger new games and some old games as well. Like if we play something that's just like, damn, I played this real cool thing for the first time and make a cool video talking about it. That's what we're doing here today. So first, short form, hopefully 20 minutes or so or less for this. We'll see. We like to ramble. Welcome to Gaming Ramble. I'm Brandon, joined by Loon. How you feeling, Loon?
Yeah, it's obviously that new era, as it were. Um, it's going to be interesting. I think the main thing is we're targeting singular games every now and then just to try and lean up the big tier makers at the end of the month. If you can just imagine, you're cutting about 10, 15 minutes off of that. It just makes it a lot more digestible. So
Yeah, totally. And the first one on the docket is South of Midnight from old Compulsion over there, the Xbox now owned studio. And I was really surprised by this, Loon. I was kind of going into this with somewhat skeptical eyes. I was like, I don't know. From what I've seen of the combat, I'm just not quite sure if it's going to be substantial enough to keep me locked into it. And I kind of still feel that way. Like, I don't really think the combat is that great at all. But man, this world, like, it just reminded me of everything I love most about the PlayStation 2, original Xbox, GameCube into the PS3 360 era. Like it is just so scaled back, so linear, so to the point, and it just tells a really, really compelling story from front to back. I think it kind of loses a little bit of its luster towards the end. It feels a little bit rushed. But I thoroughly enjoyed this game a great deal. And I know we're going to kind of kick it back and forth. I don't want to just dominate the whole review here. But I'm curious, is this a game that you're interested in? Is this a game you have any kind of questions or anything piquing your curiosity that you want to know about?
So obviously this will come out after the fact of the other videos, which I already alluded to of me choosing to be very like driven in what I'm playing. Meaning so like sticking to one thing. I'm in
Yep.
I'm in that kind of mindset at the moment. So still in Assassin's Creed Shadows Realm at the moment. Um Obviously South Midnight came out. I was looking at it and it's a weird feeling I have with the game because when it was first announced and we talked about it, I was like, ugh. Like it didn't do anything for me. I thought if that was going to be the art style that played with the gameplay, with the choppiness and stuff like that, that wouldn't have been something that I would have been able to sit with. Um, and also just that setting isn't the most interesting for me. So it's that kind of thing of like if I'm already like kind of down on something and you give me like any excuse. So I was like fairly down. But everything that they showed after that, every single bit of snippet that we got, it got more and more like, okay, okay, all right. And it gained
Yeah.
it gained more and more interest, and then it's just that thing of unfortunately, like I'm scaled into Shadows right now, so I've not dove into it myself. But I think this is why we're doing these videos of like it
Totally.
doesn't matter if I've not played it because I have questions about it and you have played it.
Exactly.
So this is perfect. So the big question for me was that big turnoff. How egregious is that choppiness art style? Or is it barely there? Is it like what is it?
Dude, so once again, I'm not a big settings. I don't tweak the settings often at all when I play games. So maybe it was automatically turned off, but I barely even noticed anything like that. It just kind of flowed. It has a very particular style of animation, of course, but the whole like I don't know, stop motiony, like whatever the effect you would use
Mm-hmm.
there, the term you would use there, like that did not, it didn't present itself as a overly obnoxious or an overly intrusive experience to the game. Like I was flowing from cutscenes to combat without really even noticing some significant change in terms of the presentation. Of course, the cutscene presentation, and that's one thing I will give a lot of credit for, is that this game has like a very consistent cutscene quality that they're aspiring to. Like they don't have the thing where, okay, the first hour you're getting really good cutscenes, and for the rest of the game it's all dog shit.
Yeah.
A lot of games fall to that, where you get really strong cutscenes out the gate, and then the character models over time, cutscene quality over time starts to diminish. Usually that's for bigger games, so it's a little bit understandable. But that's the thing I like about this specific scale of game, where whenever you're not trying to do something that's 30 hours, like it probably took me 11, 12 hours to finish it, maybe even a little bit less. When you're not trying to make something that's 50 plus hours, you can be so much more intentional with the 10 hours that you do have. And all of the cutscenes are incredibly just from voice acting to animation to the writing. I actually thought was really strong. I think they have certain messages in this game that are this whole idea of not to go into spoiler territory, but I like that concept of monsters in terms of human, whatever, people who become evil don't get there by just waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every monster, every horrible human has a pretty fucked up story that led him to that point. And while this game definitely is a little bit more in the cutesy vein, of course, like it's not trying to be over the top with its super dark, oppressive, and it is dark and oppressive at times. It's threading that line really well between something that you would expect to see a Disney film, and then like just enough darkness to keep, someone who is, I'm 30 years old and I was enthralled to see this to the end. So it did a great job with the narrative, other than some of like, I think the most compelling character of the entire game is revealed at the end, and then
Mm.
just he kind of goes away like really, really quickly. And I'm like, not a spoiler or anything. It's just his arc doesn't really feel like it has time to form. So that'd be like my main nitpick of South of Midnight Story.
Yeah. It's it's the thing. The only complaint I've seen online is that the combat seems to be a bit lacking.
Yeah.
Um, Everything else that I've seen on it, that people have actually, that you can tell when they've actually played it, because they have thoughts that they've actually formed, and there's substance behind them and stuff. Like the animation quality, they seem to be all on board with. The story's fun and everything. It's just the combat is a little bit repetitive and
Yes.
maybe lacking in diversity. I think is probably
Yes.
the term.
I think that word specifically diversity of enemies, diversity of encounters, diversity of attacks, diversity of, move set, like that's where the game really lacks. And just across the board in combat, it's a little bit lacking. I think they do a good job of making up for that in some interesting areas where they will, for instance, you have chase scenes a lot in this game where monsters will just chase you and you have to do some like quick platforming. And it's nothing complicated at all. But there's like some wall running. I actually think they have a really cool mechanic with the wall running where you hold down the right thumbstick up or down and you can actually scale the wall while running it. It's really interesting, something I haven't seen much of in games before. And so they do interesting things like that. And there's this one boss fight in specific, probably around 6, 7 hours into the game, where they do a lot of cool environmental tricks, just a lot of cool subtle story beats while actually playing the game.
Mhm.
So it's blending the gameplay and the storytelling together real well. But I do think that without a doubt, whenever you boil down to mechanics, you're looking at a push mechanic, kind of like a force push, a force pull mechanic. And you can use those for some environmental effects as well later on in the game. But you do have a cool dash where pretty much if you dash or dodge at the perfect time, you'll knock back the enemies and do a little bit of damage. But no doubt, like I'm not gonna try to make excuses for the gameplay. The gameplay is weak, or it's not weak. It's
It's the
just
weakest aspect.
yes,
It's not particularly weak. So how about then what it does better then? So that's clearly the narrative, I would assume, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The thing with these types of games when they're scaled back, sometimes they can get it like you said, with the combat being the weaker aspect of the game. Does this then take time to slow the game down and like focus on the narrative?
Ooh, that's a
Or is
really
it
good question.
or is it constantly pushing you, like you get little narrative bits but it's constantly like pushing you forward?
Damn, that's actually something I didn't consider, and now I'm like thinking to, because we're gonna do a scoring system here, I presume of some sort, because it's just silly and fun. That actually would be something that would knock back the score. Now that I'm thinking about it, so great point to bring up, because I didn't even consider that. It's just the pacing is definitely hampered a bit by how much combat there is in this game. Where the story has you hooked and you're into it, no doubt, and you want to see it through. And
Mhm.
even the gameplay, like traversal, exploration, just going off and finding little skill points to upgrade with, interacting with different environments and looking at, oh, this picture brings back this memory, or oh, here's a note that gives some backstory. Like, I really enjoyed just the wandering around of this game, but the when you get into the combat arenas, it's going to be the same combat arena every single time in this game with like five enemies max that you'll see throughout the entire game, and then bosses. So five standard enemies and a few bosses, which once again, it's okay for this scale of game, kind of, but it does get repetitive, and I guess it would overall hurt the pacing of the story. However, I do think that counterbalance, like I said, of oh, now I have a paraglider, and I'm roaming around with my paraglider in these very linear, but still some room to move around, some room to explore. And I'm gliding with this air glider thing, and now I got a grapple hook, and I'm using this grapple hook and going to like they do enough outside of just straight up combat, moment to moment combat, where the moment to moment gameplay, because that's the thing where people often anytime you hear gameplay, a lot of people just think combat, where there is more outside of combat that would be also defined as gameplay in this game. That's pretty strong. So yeah, but no doubt to your point, yeah, the focus on and the repetition, how much combat you're given, probably does hurt the game a little bit.
Okay. So then my next point that I'd want to be like touched upon with you saying that it's obviously a scaled back game, but that's still impacting it. So how long is it? Have you finished it?
Hmm.
So you finished it. How long did it take you to roll credits?
Yeah, so I finished it. I can actually look it up real quick.
And then to
Um,
tag on to that as well, with that being like how long did it take to finish it? What was the percentage then of the game that was spent giving you narrative beats compared to combat?
So it's saying on my Xbox that it took me, oh damn, I even shorter than I thought. It's about 9 hours it took me to finish South of Midnight. Um, Now you can like for those of you who know me, I'm not gonna go and do absolutely everything in a game. I'm just not that type of dude. So if you wanted to go and get every, upgrade point and see everything interact with every single note, I would assume you could probably push this up to I don't know, maybe 13 hours, 14 hours, something like that if you really wanted to do everything in the game. But there's no real side content or anything like that, so you're not given side quests or anything, which I love that. But I will say you I wish the story was a bit more pronounced. I wish you got it a little bit more consistently than you do. It's still fairly consistent, but there are certain characters, like I said, towards the end of the game specifically, it really feels like the end of the game got cut short.
Mm.
Um, where the end of the game has like a couple big beats where I'm like, it feels like, are we building to a sequel here? Are we like, what are we doing here with this ending that feels like it's not fully realized? So, yeah, I would say yes. I do think that the combat kind of gets in the way of the story, and you I would have liked to have seen maybe like a 10%, 15% shift away from combat to story, but nothing that's egregious at all.
Okay. Um, being a big uh, soundtrack music centric person, something that they showed off in the trailer was when you're going. They said when you're working your way to the bosses, you're being fed these little songs, and then the song will play out, right? And I remember that you said when you'd heard that, oh, you now saying that there's no side content it means that you don't miss any of them song beats then, right? Leading up to it.
Right.
They're all on the path, which is what I kind of would have guessed if they're going with that, and that's what I said at the time. If you're going to be going with a mechanic like that, how impactful was it when you got the whole song? Did you feel like it was something that deserved to be like trumpeted in that trailer? Did they use it to the full extent of what it should have been, basically?
It's it's some of the best music you'll ever hear in a game.
Okay.
It's unfucking believable, and I can't believe that's why this is so good to have you here to prod for information. Like I, that music was fantastic, and I was just gonna blow by and completely forget to talk. You can't forget to talk about that music. It's unreal how good the music is, and I would assume that when we get towards the end of the year for Keeley's Game Awards and shit like that, this should
Yep.
probably take that in a landslide. I would assume like they have full songs dedicated to these individual bosses and these individual moments, like full lyrics, not just a tempo rising, tempo shifting to
It
correspond
is a
with
song.
the
It's not just like a
a
melody.
literal song. It's wild, dude. And while I think sure the boss fights leave a little bit to be desired in certain instances, the actual the cinematic quality of the build up, the hype to get to that moment, and like with the music and just like I said, the art style is fantastic. It's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful game to look at, and I think that by and large the characters are really strong. Like I said, maybe a little bit underbaked, but by and large, really strong characters. And the music highlights each of those characters expertly.
Awesome. Right. Were there any particular things that you wanted to specifically touch on, or did you feel like you got enough out of that? And I'll lead off with my final question if you're.
Yeah. So I want to really emphasize the if you are into that PS2, think God of War style game, honestly, up to your Uncharted's and into the PS3 era, your Heavenly Swords or whatever, this is a game, a Kena Bridge of Spirits, even from recently, kind of reminiscent of that. Um, but I like this more than Kena Bridge of Spirits. I know that might be crazy. People seem to love Kena Bridge of Spirits, but I really, really love South of Midnight, man. I it's you have to go into it understanding that, yeah, like Uncharted's not giving you necessarily incredible gameplay from Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. In 4, you definitely get that, but like Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, it's pretty simple third person shooting. You got awesome spectacle and cool set pieces, and like that's how I feel here, where the gameplay is not reinventing the wheel at all, but I like everything else that surrounds it.
Hmm.
And I know we're talking about a video game here, so obviously I'm gonna have to dock some points for the combat not being good, but there's actual gameplay in terms of the exploration, platforming, all that surrounding it that I do really like. And to your point, maybe they do rely on combat too much, but there's so many surrounding parts that I enjoy with this game that I'm gonna have to give it a pretty high score here.
Okay. The final question, I guess, before you drop that score, you were saying that they brought in story beats or characters, for instance, and then they weren't fully realized. Do you think that this game will then lead with a sequel or an expansion, or do you think it's just going to be left like, all right, there's that title and like We Happy Few, for instance, like just that's never getting a sequel, like that's just it's going to be one of them
So
things, and if they did end up doing say a sequel, what would you want them to like? What would be the biggest thing like to add? Not per se change because it would obviously be like the you said with like the combat and everything. But what do you think the game is missing?
So I think that first, let me say, I think the likelihood of a sequel unfortunately has nothing to do with the game's quality. It's going to be if it sells or not, just like it's a brutal business. And we're seeing that more and more every single day that like really good games come out and nobody plays them. I don't know if that's going to be the case for this. I have no idea. If I'm being completely real, I don't suspect this is going to have some huge sell through. I don't think this is going to be a million copy plus sold. And I don't know, maybe does it have to be that to get a sequel? I don't know the business reality facing this game and the likelihood of a sequel. But what I do know is for me personally, what I would want to see in a sequel is see, I would struggle to give this the same score as something like an Enslaved Odyssey to the West or like those God of War games or like it feels so close to being on that level. And I think that's the bummer where this does feel like Uncharted 1, where we could get Uncharted 2, where Uncharted 2 was a huge step forward
Yeah,
in terms of everything, spectacle, combat, set pieces, everything. And we live in a day and age where it's just so unlikely that if your game doesn't just do astronomical numbers that it ever sees a sequel. But what I would want is just the obvious thing: better combat, more options in combat, more diversity of enemy types, maybe fighting enemies that just are a little bit more interesting. The enemies that you fight in this game, other than the bosses, are bland as shit. Um, yeah, so that would be kind of my main
no side
takeaway for what I would
quests.
want for a sequel. Yeah, keep no side quests. Like,
No side.
uh,
Oh,
yeah, no, I hate
damn.
that shit, man. If you wanna do them, like, I think the best thing about this game is its focus. It's constraint. It's idea of everything here is worth seeing, and we don't want to put anything in this game that is not worth seeing.
That's
So
cool.
like, if you want to make really compelling side quests, sure. But my opinion is like, why not just make it a main story then? If it's really worth seeing, put it in the main story to where people have to see it. And that's what I like the most about linear games. You know what I mean? Where it, it's not overstaying its welcome. 15 hours, boom, you saw pretty much everything the game has to offer, other than some little tidbits you can go and explore and find different notes and all that. But yeah, man, this is it's a good game. Good game.
Alrighty. Well, you wanted to give it a score,
We're at that moment. Um,
and I guess before I'll keep putting roadblocks in your way. I think this will be a fun little like brain pick. So this is a Game Pass title. They're on a real hot streak right now. You played Avowed, right?
yep.
You did this. Did you play any other Game Pass titles that dropped? You did Adamfall as well.
Adamfall, Mullet Magic. They got some good shit going right now.
So of the games that you've played this year from Game Pass, is this taking that top spot, or
Oh wow.
is this going to be warming the seat for something else?
Yeah, Leland, what a damn. So you're I don't know, dude. Mullet Mad Jack is really good. Really good. For people who don't know, first person, kind of roguelike, boomer shooter-esque, crazy art style, 80s anime vibes. That's really, really fun, and we'll talk about that in the ranking. Avowed was good. I would like this more than Avowed, I would say. I would take this. Ooh, Adamfall was I I don't know, Loon. Like I think Adamfall might be number one for me. I don't you're right though. It's been a stacked lineup of Game Pass games. So I don't think this would be number one, but it's up there.
Just wanted to throw you that
Um,
one last curveball.
no, I appreciate it, dude. That's why this shit's so fun. Putting me on the spot, making me sweat a little bit. All right. So overall score, how you want to do these. That's the cool thing, once again, about this being the first time we're coming up with all this on the fly. So we're thinking 0 to
Uh,
100 rating system.
so I did see, I can't remember who it was in the Discord that argued the reason why they do 1 to 5, and it's because it's fairly like set in stone of just like really bad, not good, middle of the ground being free, good, and then like exceptional. So I think keeping it simple with like the out of 5, I think would be good.
Yeah, I like the flexibility though of the full 100-point scale.
I mean,
But
you
okay.
run with what you want, of course.
I we can definitely shift this as we go. Maybe you have a system that's different from, like, it ain't like we're not putting this shit on Metacritic or anything. I have no intentions of doing anything like that, so we can score the games however we want to. Um, yeah, you know what? I'll stick with the 0 to 100. I like 0 to 100. I'm gonna go for South of Midnight. I'm gonna lock this in at a 81. I think this is a solid, like, it's definitely, this is the definition of an 8 out of 10 video game to me, where it's not hitting that 9 out of 10 range. It's not hitting obviously a 10 out of 10 range, but we need 8 out of 10s to exist. We desperately need 8 out of 10s to exist. And that's the one thing that I love the most about Game Pass, is where hopefully the idea of it, if it is actually successful and can sustain itself, we can get 8 out of 10 games that don't necessarily have to sell 20 million copies to exist, to justify their existence. So,
Adamfall is a perfect example of this. Like,
yep.
I I know we're heaping a lot of praise on Game Pass here, but like Adamfall wouldn't have been anywhere near as successful as it is without being in Game Pass. Because
Yeah.
whenever Rebellions put something else out that isn't Sniper Elite, so even like Strange Brigade, it kind of just came out and no one cared. Um, they, I know a lot of people get really caught up in like players on that doesn't translate to sales, but it's still that's still success. That's still people that you're giving the product to that can become a fan that will buy something in the future off of that. That's also what needs to be kept in mind. So yeah, 8 out of 10 games really do need to exist, like you said. We can't just
Absolutely.
have like best of the best and worst of the worst. Like, come on, man. It's never been. That's what makes me laugh. It's never been like that in the industry either. Like PS2 gen, like people have like fond memories of it. The amount of garbage on that system, mid range stuff on that system, 7 out of 10s on that system. Like, but it was fun.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I love a Spider-Man, Edge of Time and then Shattered Dimensions and like these wonky kind of offshoot, very linear. Like, yeah, and that's obviously PS3 360, but those two eras specifically, they just provided so many of this style of game, and I'd like to see more of it. So, yeah, South of Midnight 8.1, really, really solid video game. I enjoyed this a great deal.
Awesome. So
So.
there we have it. The very first Game and Ramble impressions review, something along them lines. However we want to
Yeah,
brand it. We're working it out.
absolutely. We'll make sure to title these appropriately and all that stuff. Like if there is a game we come in here and we just got early first impressions of a GTA 6 before we dive hundreds of hours into it and we just play the first 10, it's like we'll make sure to yeah, we'll never put review in that title, obviously. But yeah, I'm cool with calling this a review. Played it,
Yeah.
finished it,
Review, final
enjoyed it a good deal.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, guys, we appreciate you greatly. Stay tuned to the Game and Ramble YouTube channel. And yeah, hit us up with your comments. Let us know if you played South of Midnight. Let us know how you feel about it. And yeah, without further ado, guys, we shall see you very, very soon. Take it easy. And I think that's about it. Appreciate you guys. See you soon. Goodbye.
See you later.